I just think that this Russia collusion hoax being shown for the true hoax it was is just top of mind for me right now. Donald Trump was right again. Let me remind everybody, and maybe you all remember this already, that Donald Trump said that Obama was spying on his campaign. He said that our campaign never colluded with Russia, that it was made up, that it was a hoax. I'll remind everyone as well that this all started with Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign. Don't forget that. It was in 2016, and apparently CIA director at the time, John Brennan, discovered that Hillary had approved the plan to falsely smear President Trump and insinuate that he colluded with Russia. You remember the Steele dossier? Remember that money for that came from the Clinton campaign? And we now have Brennan's handwritten notes recounting not one, but two meetings at the White House that included Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Clapper, Comey. They all knew that it was phony. But instead of coming out, Liz, and telling the American people that this was all fake and it was all phony, what happened? Anybody remember how it all played out? Yeah, that's right. We had to go for several years and get a deep dive into everything that happened. It cost our country somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million to come out on the other end of it, to know that, guess what? This had nothing to do with Donald Trump colluding with Russia. The only person who colluded with anyone was Hillary Clinton and her campaign. And I'll tell you what, Liz, the fact that Barack Obama was at least in on these meetings and at least knew a little bit about it, this is very interesting stuff. And now Tulsi Gabbard has sent all of this information over to the Department of Justice to see what they want to do with it. Wow. What do you think of all this, Liz?
You know, it's a lot, but it's also a little at the same time, probably because we've been through so much since then, right? Like when you think about the Russia collusion hoax, like it was so much at the time and so ridiculous and so painful even in the moment to think about. But I mean, knowing that he's had a mugshot since then and every other fake indictment that's been thrown his way and the 2020 election and everything else he's gone through, you kind of forget about it. But it takes me back to it feels like yesterday that I was on that campaign in 2016 and I remember these accusations and I remember thinking, where on earth would we have figured out how to collude with anyone? We were just a bunch of 20-something-year-old rebels who just loved Donald Trump and believed in this guy and had no idea how to, run a campaign, let alone win an election. The whole thing was ridiculous. Then again, it's fun to think back and realize that while they were making fun of us in the media and saying he had no chance of beating Hillary Clinton, they were concocting this plan at the same time because they were so fearful, not only of Donald Trump, but of his, 20-something-year-olds made up, I guess, campaign. I don't even know what you call it. It was a bunch of kids who believed in this man and loved this country and took down the Clinton machine. And it's amazing still to think about. But yeah, I can't believe that it happened. And also it's sad that we're getting this kind of news, more than 8 years later. No one's paying attention. No one cares. And no one's realizing that their favorite person, Barack Obama, actually colluded against the country in one of the worst ways possible because he was threatened not just by Donald Trump, but by the overwhelming support that he had for the American people that the Democrats still to this day have no clue how to go up against.
So Reagan, there's so much here for me. First of all, I'm curious what happens to people. Like, does this go to the level of treason? What do we call this whenever something like this happens? It's unprecedented. Let me just read you a little excerpt of what DNI Tulsi Gabbard said over the weekend. She said, the implications of this are frankly nothing short of historic. Over 100 documents that were released on Friday detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama, if just weeks before he was due to leave office after President Trump had already been elected. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious, it should concern every single American because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. Reagan, these people felt like they knew better than the American electorate. They thought that the American people made a mistake in electing Donald Trump to the White House in 2016. And so they said, well, we don't want this to be a success and a successful presidency. We don't care how bad it is for our country. Again, I just talked about the fact that the Mueller report, don't forget, that's what we had to do. We had to investigate all of this, cost tens of millions of taxpayer dollars to get to the bottom of the fact that, of course, no one colluded from our campaign. Donald Trump didn't collude with Russia. But this is about these people going out of their way to try and thwart President Trump and the will of the people, as far as I'm concerned. Their goal was to take him down. Their goal was to basically have a reason that people questioned it, and then I guess they were going to go in and impeach him and get him out of office. I don't know. This is serious, serious stuff, and I'm shocked that it's taken this long, quite frankly, for it to come out, but thanks to Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, it's serious stuff. It's a bombshell. It's absolutely unbelievable. And no one's talking about it. I mean, we're talking about it right now. We're talking about it at the Daily Caller. These right-leaning outlets are talking about it. But when I look at the mainstream media, and every morning I go to all the mainstream media and I read their coverage, because part of my job as a White House correspondent is to zig where these guys are zagging, is to figure out what they're obsessed with and cut through that and get to the truth. And there's little to no coverage of this memo. I read some headline on one of the websites coming in right before this interview that said what Tulsi Gabbard presented was very thin and that there was almost no evidence at all. And I think it's a complete shame that they're turning an eye to what Gabbard put forth. And I thought that was the whole point of learning that Joe Biden was not fit for office when he was in office, and reflecting on your coverage, and the media, made us believe that they were going to reflect on how they covered Joe Biden and how they covered Donald Trump and how they covered everything over the last several years, and really look inward. And this is a perfect example of why you should never trust the mainstream media, why you shouldn't trust the legacy media, and how the Trump administration is raising up these new media voices, because you can't trust them for the truth and to cover the administration accurately. And so that, to me, has been the biggest scandal of this whole thing, is that they're really just looking away. They don't want to cover it. Cover it obsessively, like you were covering the Epstein files for the last couple of weeks. Please. It drives me crazy.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.